From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 020 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com, where we discuss what's hot and what's cool in the world of mobile technology, Windows, Android, iPhone, everything in between. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow, and I'm joined by our managing editor, Anton D. Nagy. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Top of the morning to you guys.
And by our editor-in-chief, the man in charge, Brandon Miniman. Good morning to you.
Yo, 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 what up?
What's happening? We listened
Tony did something different, so I didn't want to feel left out.
No, it's good. I mean, we got to bring some freshness here. We just listened to, or at least I just listened to Jock Jams to fire up my morning because as the adult listeners in the crowd will know, and the underage listeners should not know, but maybe do, you should not party really late after having eaten nothing. And that's what I did last night. So about 15 minutes ago, I was feeling absolutely very low. I was feeling very, very horrible about life. And then I listened to this awful, awful audio mix called Jock Jams. And if you were not a teenager in the late 90s in America, you probably don't know about it. Just YouTube it, and you'll enjoy it. It's great. I want to kick off the podcast with it, but we have copyright issues.
That being
said, we have some stuff to get through here. We've got a special announcement. I'm guessing we have at least one or two new listeners to this particular episode because this is the first time we've tied in the podcast, our weekly podcast, which we do every week, called the Pocketnow Weekly, in with a giveaway contest. And that is a giveaway for this Sonos wireless-hi-fi system. So at some point, listeners, if you have not checked it out on our website, you should. Just search for Sonos, S-O-N-O-S, on Pocketnow.com, and it's a sweet wireless audio system. I happened to listen to one at a winery over the Thanksgiving holiday, and it's really awesome. You can stream internet music, and it's very good quality sound. You've got remote control and stuff. We're giving one of these systems away. So at some point during the episode today, you will hear a hint word. It is a single word hint. And it is the only hint you need, and all you need to do when you hear that hint word is to email it to contest.
Is to continue listening to the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Your first step is not to immediately tune out of the podcast, and your second step is not to immediately go to the comments and tell everyone what the time code is of the hint, because I think we're going to disable comments to prevent that, because there's always some tool out there. But fortunately, our listenership is not comprised of tools, mainly. But there's always somebody who wants to ruin all the fun. But go send the hint to contest@pocketnow.com. Follow Sonos and Pocketnow on Facebook and or Twitter. And that's all you need to do to enter the giveaway. It's a really cool giveaway. So what, Brandon?
What?
I can hear you laughing. I don't know what you're laughing about, but I like it, I'm sure.
I was smiling. I was thinking of maybe we should get some of these gears for us for IFA and MWC, just keep on rocking in the hotel room.
It's a really, really good idea. We managed. We got to make sure and keep the door open as well. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sonos is really, really good stuff. There's one thing missing. I've got a Sonos or two, and it's very enjoyable. But the thing is, you got to plug in the Sonos to the wall, obviously, to power it. It would be so cool if there was a portable Sonos that worked like over Bluetooth or created somehow a Wi-Fi mesh network. So you could take your little Sonos thing, kind of like what is that? The Jawbone Jambox, right?
Yeah.
It's like the size of the Jawbone Jambox. You take it with you to the beach, and you can control the Sonos from your smartphone. And it would have to work differently because right now, Sonos works over your router. There's like a wireless bridge, and so it's really downloading content from the internet on its own. So it would actually have to do like internet pass-through through your phone if it's streaming from, say, Spotify. But I really hope they come out with a portable product. It would be amazing.
I was going to say, I would be very surprised to learn that they were not at least thinking of doing that. I mean, that sounds like a great idea to me. It's a cool system. You should check it out. I didn't give it much thought until, like I say, the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm at a vineyard, and they're playing this stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's really amazing sound. And then 2 days later, Tony's like, Michael, we're going to do a giveaway. It's going to be the Sonos thing. I'm like, oh, awesome. So anyway, so that's that. That's all you need to know. So listeners, if you don't know why later on there's a hint word coming on, you should have listened to this portion of the podcast.
Yeah, and hint. This is not the hint.
This is not the hint yet. Exactly. The second thing, we want to kind of jump into this thought thread to kick off the show. And this is something that Tony and I were talking about yesterday. We got news recently, just to kind of, we're kicking this off with Windows Phone, by the way. We got news recently, there's some rumors out that this Samsung ATIV S, their kind of blockbuster monstrosity of a Windows Phone, is delayed. And I think we're pretty confident in this rumor. There's no update tag on this, retracting it or anything like that. But it might not be arriving until next year is the word, I think, for what? Yeah, until 2013 in some markets. Yeah, for some markets. And Tony and I were talking about the absurdity of this because the ATIV S was kind of, if it wasn't the first Windows Phone 8 device officially announced, it was one of the first, right?
It was the first. It was the first. Well. Every time I think about the ATIV S, I just close my eyes and remember you and me in Berlin at the Samsung booth, and we knew the press release was out, and we were asking for the ATIV S because we didn't see it on display, and it wasn't on display, but it was the first Windows Phone 8 device to be announced.
Yeah, we were playing with the Smart PC and the Windows 8 tablets, and it's like, I wonder if they've got the ATIV S out, and we kind of expected to get our hands on, but no dice. And it's interesting that it was the first to be announced, and it's going to be the last of the Windows Phone 8 devices to be released. So I think, what do we think on the reasons for this? I mean, do we think this is a tactical move? Do we think that or this is a mechanical problem? What's going on?
Well, I'll put forth a theory. Please. I think that over the last 6 months, Samsung has been hyper-focused on Galaxy S3 and Note 2. So much so that they've probably allocated fewer engineers and product managers to the Windows Phone ATIV S. And so now they're dragging their feet a little bit, and I think the carriers are pushing back and saying, hey, we've already got the 8X and the Lumia 920 and the 822 and all of these other Windows Phone. They're already positioned. They're ready to go. We can't release yet another Windows Phone in December. It would mess up our marketing message. You guys are too late. Let's do it next year.
You think there's like pressure from the carriers not to release it in the midst of all this? I would think that they would want to push as many devices as they possibly could for the holidays.
Yeah, it's either the carriers are pushing back and Samsung is just ready now, or Samsung's just not ready.
What if, I was wondering if maybe Samsung had some, if there was some animosity there, because Microsoft has really been showing a whole lot of, HTC has got their Halo Windows Phone products, Nokia's got their really intense stuff, and they're getting a lot of kind of love from Microsoft in that region. I just wonder if, and then here's Samsung with this device that I'm looking at, the leaked image right now, and it's like, wow, this is kind of like what? It's kind of like a squared-off Galaxy S3 for Windows Phone. But, it's not terribly compelling, so I don't know. It doesn't seem like they have a lot invested in what's going on with the Windows Phone 8 platform. I don't know.
Maybe they're trying to make a decision on whether Windows Phone is worth their time, and they kind of going with the theory that Samsung's not ready. Maybe they want to wait and hear about some holiday sales numbers on Windows Phones, and if it's enough to get consumers' attention, they'll jump in and maybe even start working on another Windows Phone, or if not, they'll just launch this ATIV S and see and probably have mediocre sales.
What if they're working on countering some of the special features from like Nokia and some of the special stuff that HTC is doing? What if they come out of the gate with this ATIV S way late, but they follow the mantra of if we can't be first, we're going to be better? Like, what if Samsung just takes a lot of their features from the Galaxy S3 and adapts them, to Windows Phone 8? Like, remember when the Galaxy S3 was announced and it was like, here's 47 features. You're not going to use, 32 of them, but the rest are really, really cool. Like, I wonder if that's what the thinking is here.
They're creating a megaphone.
Right. Yeah.
I just partially happen to agree with Brandon, and I agree with him in regards of Samsung being to blame. I don't blame the carriers. I just think, I'm going to put this out there, Samsung doesn't care about Windows Phone. I think their experience with Windows Phone 7, 7.5, made them learn, or even more, their experience with Android made them learn that the real money is where Android is.
For them.
So, I don't think they do care about it, and I don't think they're ready.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they're making a lot of money from their Android devices, and they're number one in Android right now. And they need to stay number one, and it's not easy to do that. Whenever there's a lot of money up for the taking, the competition gets better and better. Like this HTC DNA we're going to talk about later is awesome. LG's got some good stuff, and Motorola, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
and so Samsung's like, we gotta keep this momentum. We gotta start, we gotta get this Galaxy S4 out in the next 3 or 4 months. This Windows Phone thing is it's a hedge against Android. We don't really need a hedge right now because it's clear that Android has a big future.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Samsung brings to the table. I'm going to be very disappointed if it's a situation like the Focus. What was it? The Focus S? That was like the Galaxy S2 for Windows Phone?
Yeah.
When it was, I mean, it's not a bad product. I'm not saying that. It was just that, like,
it's not, but just think about it for a second. I mean, Windows Phone has a 2 point something. Okay, let me be 3% market share. Do they care to be the third or a second OEM in a 3% market share, or do they care to be the first ones in a 72% market share?
Sure, and I see. I find that argument more compelling for somebody like LG, right, who doesn't have a lot of. They're a big company, but they're not doing terribly well, and they want to focus their efforts. They really want to hone their efforts on one particular platform and do well there. And I think we're seeing them do that with the Optimus G on Android. But LG is not doing anything on Windows Phone. But for Samsung, with all of these resources that Samsung is just so massive, and has so much spare capacity. I think. I feel like they can be kind of like Microsoft. They're like, yeah, we'll lose money on this to try and play the long game here.
Well, I think it's a matter of willing to do that because, as you said, it's the Galaxy S3. The chassis is there. The screen is the same. The casing is almost the same. The only thing which is different in this phone, and I'm looking at the specs, is probably the chipset, which is a Qualcomm instead of an Exynos processor. So that shouldn't be a problem for a company like Samsung. I think it's more of a matter of I don't want to do that. I mean, why should I do that? I don't. Not yet.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. We're going to, I do want to jump into Windows Phone 8.
But first,
I understand that our editor-in-chief has something to say.
Well, I've got a thought thread, too.
You do?
Yes.
Well, this is a surprise, folks. This wasn't in the rundown. All right, go.
Okay. Hope it's not role-playing.
I love it. I hope it's not role-playing, too.
So you guys might have noticed that in the Google Play Store, after you download an app, there's a button now that says Keep Shopping. Have you noticed?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Why is it awesome?
Well, because I've been downloading apps nonstop on my Lumia 920 recently, and I've been just so tired of getting kicked back into the OS from the store and having to jump back into the store.
Yeah.
Yeah. But wait, so the Keep Shopping button, go ahead. Continue to make your point.
The Android... The Play Store never kicked you out, so
That's true, it didn't.
So they just made a subtle change, but I think it's actually a bigger change than that. I'm trying to hash out this thought; it's rather complex. I think that Keep Shopping button, along with several other things, is a new push from Google. It's very subtle to get people to buy more stuff in Android because the vast majority of Android users, unlike iOS users, don't buy things. They don't buy apps. They look for free apps first. Most normal humans do. And they really don't, they're not spending, $5, $20, $30 on content. So you look at the Nexus 7 and the Nexus 10, which come preloaded with these big widgets that have like books and movies and TV shows. And then you look at the new slogan for the Nexus family of devices, which is the playground is open. Right? And then you've got this button that says keep shopping. And that word shopping, when I download free apps, I'm not shopping. But when I shop, I'm paying for stuff. So I think they're kind of subtly putting a message in Android users' head that, yeah, this Google Play Store now is so much more than free apps. It's a place where you can buy stuff. And in fact, you should buy stuff so that developers can make more money so that we can fix this problem of not so good Android tablet apps. Because if a developer wants to make a tablet app, they make it for the iPad and they make more money because iOS users are so used to buying things, you know?
Right, and not to mention users on other platforms like Windows Phone. There's a lot more paid apps on Windows Phone. There were a lot more expensive apps on WebOS when it was around. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was just trying to download a couple apps while you were speaking on the Play Store, and I actually couldn't get the Keep Shopping button to pop up, but maybe that's because I was doing it on the Note too.
Or maybe you don't have the latest version of Google Play Store.
Right.
That's probably what it was, yeah, because I haven't used this thing in a couple weeks. Yeah, that's fascinating on a kind of a broad level, and I wonder. I often find myself wondering this about Google's business model. Right? It's like their whole thing is like get their content in front of more eyeballs so that ads can be served, so that there's a bigger, they get more ad revenue. But it's interesting to see them find other ways or appear to try to find other ways of generating income, and maybe it's a move to keep the developers happier. We've heard from them time and time again, like, oh, we gotta court these developers because we need apps, particularly for the tablet.
Right. Yeah, it's a subtle move towards that. So yeah. That's my quick little thought thread. I think that button change is a little more significant than just they're
tweaking the UI.
They're tweaking the UI.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of updates and jumping back into Windows Phone, because it's our news leader for the day, because there's so much Windows Phone. I love that there's so much Windows Phone news. I feel like we spent so long not talking about it, and now it's just this massive dump of information. There's an OTA update coming in December to fix Windows Phone 8 reboot problems, or that is the rumor. And Tony, you wrote this story, and I've experienced a random reboot on my Lumia 920 the other day.
Really?
Yeah. And
because I covered this, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, and it was specific to a carrier in Germany, and it was related to the radio acting as a 4G/LTE radio or a GSM radio. And when I poked around in the States, some of the users said that there were no problem in the US. So you did have some problems.
I did indeed, yeah. And apparently, so this is, your story says that these are reports of not only Lumia 920s, but also Windows Phone 8Xs from HTC.
That is true, yes.
Interesting. So it's probably something in the firmware, or somewhere deep down there.
It is very good that Microsoft is working on this, but I have a problem. We always see that phones are a little bit late to the market, and even if they are not specifically late to the market, the period between announcing the phone and shelf availability, or let me even go further back, between the prototype and the availability is dedicated to field testing, to bug fixing. I'm sure they can miss a bug or two, but with random reboots on several OEMs, on several models, it's just something Microsoft shouldn't have missed.
I feel like all of the this happens to all of them, right? I mean, I feel like even Apple has their fair share of issues with the iPhones that they have in the past, right? We've talked about that before, and it is always annoying, and it's kind of every single company has this habit now because it's the new reality, or the not so new reality. It's been the reality for a while of releasing products that aren't ready yet and saying we'll fix it with an update.
Especially with Microsoft, who is always late to the market.
Right. Yeah. And it's been interesting kind of getting to know Windows Phone over the course of the past couple weeks, and just like getting into that kind of mindset. And I've felt at times that Windows Phone 8 is a little undercooked, and this is an example of it at the core level. I'll look forward to getting that update. But it's not the only update on the agenda, because there's this rumored additional, like a major Windows Phone 8 update. Not that this is huge news of its existence, because of course updates are always coming. But I like that the rumor is that it's called Apollo Plus, which
it's the Nodo of Windows 8.
Exactly, right.
Or the Mango of Windows 8.
Right. And this comes from a Twitter leakster of football for PDA, who's given good information in the past, and. There's no details about what the update might contain. It's supposed to drop, I think, early next year. And I think the big thing that everyone's waiting on is Notification Center, right? Like, I mean, that's the big, giant thing that Windows Phone 8 is lacking for geeks, for the people who follow the mobile space. It's like, we could really use a Notification Center. And I wrote a story to the opposite effect a couple weeks ago. But now, having used Windows Phone 8 for a couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah, I no longer have that opinion.
and as you point out, Michael, there are sort of you can kind of configure your start screen to be your own little mini notification center if you do it right.
Absolutely right, and that's why these new small tiles on the home screen are very, very useful. And you know me, I'm so sick of talking about resizable home tiles in Windows Phone 8, but it's true. Like you make a bunch of tiny little tiles, you put them into a little corner of your home screen, boom, there's your little notification center. The problem is with apps like Twitter. Like the Twitter app that does not give you notifications, or it gives you toast notifications, but the tile doesn't support notifications in its small form. So it's like, well, crap. You know, I can't, if I miss a toast notification, I have to go into the Twitter app to see it. And then you ask, well, why do you use the Twitter app? Michael, you should use the People Hub. Well, I do, but I have multiple Twitter accounts. And the People Hub doesn't support multiple Twitter accounts, which is...
Isn't there like a power user Twitter client for Windows Phone that has like a really advanced or really comprehensive live tile?
Yeah, I think Rowi or whatever, ROWI, is the one I used last time around. I just haven't had a time. Oh, I wonder if Carbon. There was a Twitter app for WebOS called Carbon, and it was beautiful. And then they ported it to Windows Phone, and it was also beautiful. I'm going to download that right after I get off the podcast. I'm going to actually take a note on that.
Well, guys, with the shared core with Windows 8, I wouldn't be surprised to see, I don't know, TweetDeck or Seismic or other huge Twitter applications for Windows Phone.
I would agree normally, but isn't Twitter itself kind of really not, kind of trying to get third-party Twitter apps off the grid?
Actually, TweetDeck, I think, is owned now by Twitter.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
sure
that's
is.
right, yeah.
I was about to say that I bet at MWC in Barcelona at the end of February we'll see Steve Ballmer on stage getting excited about 500 features plus in Apollo Plus.
Yeah,
but I just hope the following thing will not happen. I just wrote a piece today. The Samsung, I don't know exactly, let me just look it up real quick. It should be on the front page. Mm-hmm. It was the Samsung Focus 2 on AT&T getting its Windows Phone Tango update today. Yeah. So come on, guys. I just hope this will not ever happen in the future, regardless if it's a carrier phone, an unlocked phone. Microsoft needs to amp their game, needs to have updates right now. I mean, if the update is announced for May, deliver it in May.
Yeah, they need to be timely, and they also need to be significant to the user. What Microsoft likes to do is come out and say, we've got these 500 new features, 498 of which are under the hood, things you'll never notice, right. But two of which are slightly... people want... Like, that's why it's so fun to get a software update, because it, changes. It's almost like you have a new product.
Yes.
And so we need more of these features that are actually, usable UI things that actually make your everyday experience better.
Yes. And actually... I was thinking about the upgrade process to Windows Phone 8, and it's got to be so frustrating to have worked on this thing, because I think the analogy that somebody at Microsoft used, my apologies, I forget who said it, what we did when changing from 7 to 8 was like changing the engine on a race car in the middle of the race without slowing down.
And fire the pilot at the same time.
Yeah, but it's like, and that's so true, and it's such a huge accomplishment. But as a result, what happens is they've delivered an experience with Windows Phone 8 very much like Windows Phone 7. That is a massive, awesome accomplishment, but it is also not very impressive to the end user who's expecting, from this full point upgrade, this end user, you're expecting like, oh, wow, what have they done to the UI? Oh, resizable live tiles.
Yeah.
And of course there's more to it than that. I'm overstating the case a little bit, but I'm just imagining how frustrating it must be to be one of the people who worked on this and then to hear, people complaining that there's not a lot different. But anyway, that's one of these things that Windows Phone is one of these frustrations that
hey,
Windows
Michael.
Phone users. Yeah.
Do you have your Lumia 920 near you?
Yeah. Do you have your Segway smashing hat on again? Yes, I do. I've got it right in my hand. What can I do for you?
I'll make this related. I'm
Jolie by tweet.
Do you get? That's what she said, Jolie by tweet. Go ahead.
I'm just curious what you have on your start screen. I don't want to hear everything. Just can you summarize the top?
Yeah.
The first screen there?
Yeah, totally. Actually, if you look at my story from yesterday of five solutions to Windows Phone frustrations. Listeners, you can see a lot of screen grabs of my Lumia 920. Yeah, I've got the people and me tiles are big so that I can see them, rotating and doing fun stuff. I've got a ton of tiny tiles off to the right for my notification center for phone and text and email and other email and so forth. And then I've got Evernote and weather and a couple calendars. That's what's living at the top. And then as you go further down, it just becomes this big array of stuff.
Why do you have blank spots near OneNote?
Now that is a great question. Because the impulse, right, is to say, I want to fill every single square inch of usable space on this screen with stuff that is useful to me. Mm-hmm. But you know what happens when you do that? It's really ugly, I think. I think when you pack the screen full of stuff and there's no negative space, it is just this massive. And remember, half these live tiles are animating, so it just becomes this massive sci-fi panel out of the future, which normally I would be into.
Your Lumia is missing a tooth, man.
I think the missing teeth are a lot of fun. But Brandon, you would arrange your home screen differently?
I hate wasted space. I'd have to fill every last pixel with usable stuff.
Put a tile between two tiles.
Yeah, you're right. Put tiles on top of tiles.
Yeah, hey, Apollo Plus, they might do overlapping tiles.
Are they going to do card stacks for tiles? Yeah, no.
How about they do some cubes? I mean, you can maybe touch the tile and it would rotate.
Oh, and it would spin. Hey, we could have HTC Sense from 2006 again. That would be great.
Yeah, the cube.
No, I think one of my favorite things about Windows Phone is its beautiful design, is the modern UI, and I think that the modern UI looks a lot better. Just personal taste when you leave a couple tiles unused. Or if you use the official Weather Channel app, which, times out from time to time, and then you have a blank space there anyway. So that's nice. God, I hate Weather Channel apps. It doesn't matter what platform it is. They're beautiful, but they're bloated and they bog down. Well, anyway, let's not talk about the Weather Channel.
The Android Weather Channel app is atrocious. It is so bad. The iOS Weather Channel app is actually pretty good. And the iPad Weather Channel app is pretty good. But everything else, I agree. It's the biggest weather organization, I think, and they need to hire more app developers.
Guys, can I go off topic for a second?
Well, we're already there, so please.
Off topic from the off topic. I just keep on thinking about this ever since weather widgets or something weather related appeared on phones. Why would anyone use a weather widget, a weather app? I mean, just look out the window. It's the current state of the weather, the current temperature, and it's the city you're living in. I look out the window and I see what I want to see. Well, if I am to travel somewhere, I look it up over the web.
Right. Well, I mean, it's for the forecast too, but it's also temperature, right? When I'm inside, right now I'm inside a 4x6 padded booth that's inside another room with no window. I am absolutely cut off from nature. And if I want to go get some more coffee, which I will do in about an hour, it's I want to know how cold it's going to be out there. So I like knowing the current conditions.
Tony, I agree with you. I have windows in my life, and I can look outside, and you know the time of year, it's probably going to be cold or warm. I think that one of the reasons people like having these weather widgets is because a lot of companies have made them beautiful, especially HTC, like the full screen weather animations. Yeah. I don't care if you if you spend all day outside, it's just really pretty. And there's something about clouds and sunshine on your digital device that's kind of satisfying. Personally, I don't have them because, like you, Tony, I just look out the window, but I can see the draw. They're beautiful. They can be beautiful.
They really
what I really liked on the HTC HD2? Sense always had some animations, full screen animations. When it was snowing outside, it snowed on top of your icons.
Yep, that was
awesome.
Yeah. That was really and then the windshield wiper would come down.
Yes.
Yeah. They still do that on I'm pretty sure the latest Android.
On the latest Sense? On Sense 4 Plus?
I think so. I'm going to actually test it. I've got the DNA here while you guys are talking, because there's an option to show full screen weather animation, and I'm like, I don't want to use CPU cycles for that crap, but for the case of this demo.
It's for science.
I always thought it is for science.
It's for science. Yes.
I always thought that was really cool. I mean, for as much crap as we give HTC for the bloat of Sense and all that, and for as tacky as it is, I really like that windshield wiper animation when, listeners, if you're not familiar, like there would be, if it was rainy outside, the forecast told you it was rainy, it would give you little spots on your phone screen, like splashes, right, like you were driving along and you were getting drizzle on your screen, and then every so often a windshield wiper would come down from the top and like wipe it away. I mean, it's tacky, but I really liked it a lot. While Brandon is looking that up on the DNA, I want to stick with Windows Phone until we jump into Android. And so anyway, the point is that there's a lot of adaptation that is required to go to Windows Phone from another platform. And you know, I've been surprised in the past couple of days just how much I've liked the Lumia 920, because I think last week, did you guys ask me, you're like, so how do you actually like it? And I'm like, right. I don't know, you know. And I'm still really annoyed that there's no frickin' Spotify app. But, you know, besides missing apps and finding other apps really lackluster from major title, you know, coders, I'm really enjoying the experience now because, I've gotten over the culture shock. I've gotten over the transition. I miss a lot from Android still, but
one would argue that you do not need Spotify since you have Xbox Music, and I totally agree to that. But since you have Spotify as a cross-platform solution, you expect it to be there on Windows Phone 8.
That's the thing, right? Now, I'm not saying this is totally just me beefing, right? This isn't.
No, I agree with you. I see your point.
Yeah, but it's specific to me because, of course, we work in this field and we're changing phones all the time, and the only way I can keep my music with me all the time is via Spotify. Not the only way, but the easiest way, right? So blah blah blah. I'm just looking forward to some more titles coming over, but I'm also very pleased that that Windows Phone feels like home again. But it takes a while, you know. I think in some cases it takes longer than a 14-day exchange period to get used to a new platform, and that's
you got to put yourself in every scenario. You travel a little bit, you go to a concert, you go out to you know, it's so many different life scenarios. It takes more than often 2 weeks to experience that.
Exactly, and particularly with the use of the camera, I had the opportunity to take a great shot. I wrote a piece yesterday called 3 Features the Lumia 920's camera needs right now. And in it, I posted this shot from the ferry boat that is of this beautiful sunset of another ferry crossing in front of the sunset. It's an amazing photo, not because I'm full of talent, but because the Lumia 920's camera really is beautiful.
But both combined.
Oh, well, thank you. But it's, you know, it's disappointing in that it doesn't have some basic stuff that other cameras have, like HDR, like burst shot and stuff. And that's kind of what I was complaining about yesterday. And I'm looking forward to that update, and we can go on forever about how it's not really a pure view, and I've been disappointed with it in situations where there's too much light because it tends to overexpose. But
a quick question, Michael.
Yeah.
Would you be satisfied if the Lumia 920 sported the exact same imaging capabilities of the 808 PureView?
If that happened, I would never carry another phone. I don't think.
Even with the hump?
Oh, especially with the hump. I don't care about the hump. I think the 808 PureView, handling your 808 PureView, Joe Levi, don't do it weird. Handling your 808 PureView was really very surprising because I did not expect to like that phone, and I did like it a lot. And the hump makes it, listeners, if you haven't used it, it's a very thick phone. It's a very beefy device. It feels like a bar of soap in the hand, but God, it's so beautiful with that polycarbonate and the pictures it creates. And that's I was hoping for some semblance of that picture quality on the Lumia 920, and it's not there. But I think with a little bit of software tweaks, it can get closer to that. It's just that you know, with all this optical stabilization, my primary beef has been if you use the shutter button to take a shot, you know how that creates a momentary tremble in the camera? This kind of happens with all phones with shutter buttons. Well, it does that on the 920 too. And I'm like, why are you doing that if you have this like unique, one-of-a-kind optical image stabilization? Why am I still getting this shutter button?
Here's a question related to this. Many phones and many cameras apply these types of effects or countermeasures when you press the shutter button halfway down and focus. Did you try it like that?
Oh, I always have press to focus first. Yeah.
And still?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's just... Like I say, it's not unique to the 920. Every camera phone does this when you have to use the button. But anyway, you know, I think I'm trying to use this as kind of a jump in to talk about very briefly how Nokia has lost. I'm going to try and pronounce it properly. Damien Dinning, is that correct? He was the guy behind PureView, or I guess he was the one who was. He was the company's lead program manager of imaging experience.
He's the brains behind PureView.
And he's leaving. And I think the question, his tenure at Nokia is up at the end of November, was the word from Steven's story a couple days ago. He's been with the company for 9 years, and as Steven puts it, there's definitely a bit of uncertainty in the air as a direct result of his forthcoming absence. This concerns me a little bit, because one of the big things that Nokia has going for it is its differentiating factor is its camera expertise. And I don't think that they're going to lose that overnight. I mean, certainly people leave companies all the time, and it's fine, but it just gives me a little bit of pause, because I feel like PureView is going to be a crucial part of their efforts going forward, and I hope that he's not leaving because of some nefarious, reason. I don't know.
Well, I totally respect Damien because of all the reasons we know about, and I don't want to minimize his knowledge, impact, or anything else, but I think Nokia has what is necessary to continue on this road on which on this path, if I may, on which they started off, with Damien or without him. I mean, they know exactly where they want to be. They have actually this PureView, which is in the 808, from what I've understood, is a project which has been in development for like 3 or 4 years before it got to the market. So I think they are covered for the next couple of years.
I hope so. I want to jump to our final Windows Phone or Windows story, because I know Brandon over there is just, he's got to be like taking notes at this point about how he wants to dive into this DNA discussion.
I do have notes, and I was taking them. So.
I'm sure you were.
Do you have a camera here? Hi. Is my webcam on?
And just and speaking of, our perennial reminder. No, we're not going to do a video podcast anytime soon. Sorry, listeners. Yeah.
Because guys, I podcast naked. I know it's weird, but I feel more free that way. I can express my opinions.
The Pocketnow no pants hour.
No pants. I take it to the next level though. All right.
Anyway, Microsoft has announced that they are going to support the Surface RT until. For how long?
Except in Nebraska.
They're going to support the Surface RT officially until April 11th, 2017.
So people are at the store and they're like, listen, dude, I'm only going to buy this thing if I'm going to have support until 2017.
Right.
But if you tell me it's going to have support, I will buy it.
I don't, I'm fascinated by this, right? Because we're not even talking about the Surface Pro. We're not even talking about their the thing that is a closer analog to a PC that might have usability beyond. Like, can you imagine using this product in 4 years?
Yes, but I think we are reading more into this than it's necessary, and I think this is a common thing with people when they read this story.
Yeah,
it's just like, let me make an analog example with Windows XP. I mean, there were updates to Windows XP up until a certain point, but support for Windows XP doesn't mean that you will get Windows Vista. So supporting the Surface RT until 2017 will mean that if there are problems along the way, Microsoft will fix them. But this doesn't mean that the Surface RT will run Windows 9 RT.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And of course, we've seen how Microsoft feels about supporting older products. I mean, with everyone who's about to get Windows Phone 7.8 on their Lumia 900s understands, what the deal is with that. But it's like, I just can't imagine using a first generation iPad in 2014, because that's the analog here, right? I mean, that's 4 years after its launch. I can't imagine using a first generation iPad now with its current software load. I mean, my mother uses it, and she's like, "Why are the apps just closing?" And I'm like, "Well, it's because it's crappily supported on the newest software." So I don't know. It scares me to think that a product that any product in this field is going to be officially supported. I'm making air quotes. For 4 years. Yeah,
they'll probably release some Internet Explorer bug fixes, security patches, and stuff like that. Probably firmware updates for performance improvements, battery life improvements, probably service packs to Office, but that's as far as it can go, and this is my prediction.
Yeah, and I feel like my tone is crappy because I'm not. I don't mean to say this is a bad thing. I'm just saying it's rather unusual, or maybe it's not even unusual. It's just strange. It just hits the ear strange, because the Surface RT to me doesn't seem to be a product that that will have an endurance. I don't see a lot of people having a Surface RT in 4 years.
To begin with. Well,
or to begin with.
Right. And Michael, you're getting the Surface RT. Are you getting it today or is it tomorrow?
I am not sure. It is coming to me. Brandon and I traded devices. He got the DNA, and I'm getting the Surface RT. So I'm looking forward to receiving it. I think it'll probably be tomorrow if you send it the way I think you did.
Okay, and when you get it, you'll notice that the Microsoft logo is almost entirely scratched off on the back. That's not because I was very frustrated with it. It's because there's a defect.
Oh,
Why don't we exchange it? We should. I mean, it should be covered.
It's a good idea. Has this problem popped up with anybody else, or is this a defect in our unit?
I don't know. If there's a Microsoft store around here, maybe I'll take it in and see if they can do something about it.
There's one around me. I covered the Boston one's opening.
Yeah, true. Yeah. For now, I'm very, very curious, and maybe this time next week you can talk about your impressions. And I'm curious to see if they're different than mine, which weren't very favorable.
Yes, yes, and speaking of Brandon Miniman not being favorable on things. And I don't mean to say that is an unjustified position. And actually, you were very fair with the Nexus 4. Let's jump into Android. And because Brandon has earned approximately 6 million talking credits as a result of being pretty silent for about 10 minutes, I'm going to say, would you like to talk about the Nexus 4 first, or would you like to talk about the DNA first? Because I feel like you're amped on one of them.
Well, I don't think there's much to talk about with the Nexus 4. The review is up. Last time I gave 10 reasons why I really am disappointed with the Nexus 4. I mean, it's a good phone, and the final review is up on Pocketnow. You can go and read all the impressions and lots of comparison videos. Mm-hmm. And I gave it a 7 out of 10. And a lot of people are upset with it. And some people were saying, oh, the build quality, how can you say it's bad? And then I reply, oh, have you held it? And they're like, no, I pre-ordered long. I'm like, hold it, and then come back and tell me what you think about the build quality on the Nexus 4, because it's not super great. For example.
And it does look beautiful on film. I watched your review video this morning, and that you do have a couple shots there where you managed to catch the light right with the back, and all those that stippled, interesting blue sci-fi kind of paint job under the Gorilla Glass back there. It's so cool. I had a fit the other day. I almost just had a pre-order explosion on Google. Like I was like, I did. I almost went on google.com/Nexus and just ordered my own Nexus 10 and Nexus 4 because I was, I think because it was part of my transition to Windows Phone 8, I was having an allergic reaction. And I was I was having withdrawal symptoms from stock Android. I was like, get me back to what I know and love, and give me a wireless charging orb. But
speaking of the pre-order experience, so the first round of pre-orders, the first pre-order experience was terrible, was abysmal, where people would have a shopping cart and then items would disappear, and then it would say, no, we have them, and then yes, we do, and then some people got the orders through and some people got delayed, and then finally Google said, all right, we're going to make it available again. And this was a few days ago. And so now the button from notify me changed to add to cart. And like normal human beings, they changed it to say, okay, you can order it now, but it's not going to ship for 2 to 3 weeks or something. But then people were still having problems. They'd add it to the cart. It would say, this product is not available. So they screwed up a second time. I cannot believe it.
Yeah. Stephen Shank has an interesting story about an alternative viewpoint about the whole Nexus pre-order fiasco. And actually, he's got a couple in there. You should read it. It's a pretty cool piece and well thought out piece from Stephen's. Like, could some of this have been tactical? Could some of it? I mean, some of it is clearly going wrong. But is it exactly the way we're seeing it? And I can't encapsulate all of his story, but you should go read it, listeners. Not you guys. I assume you guys have read it. But go on. So the Nexus 4 review is up. I watched it this morning. And then there was also a comparison, as you mentioned, the Nexus 4 versus the Droid DNA, which I started watching, and then we had to podcast, so I didn't finish that video. I'm sorry.
Darn podcast.
I know. Let's quit.
I think the most interesting one to watch is the Galaxy Nexus versus the Nexus 4, because the expectation is that with the S4 Pro, stock Android, and the latest and greatest, that the Nexus 4 would be significantly faster than the Galaxy Nexus. And while it is faster, and while it probably is the fastest Android device out there, it's not faster by that much. It opens apps about 0.5 seconds faster, and as we know, faster is faster. And it boots up faster. It's about on par in terms of web browsing speed, which is just silly because it's got such a powerful processor, the Nexus 4. If it had the stock Android browser, there's no doubt in my mind that it would blow away the Galaxy Nexus. But that Chrome thing, man, I just can't get over that Chrome browser.
I'm in minority here. I mean, Brandon obviously doesn't necessarily like the Nexus 4. Michael's indifferent towards it, and I think I'm the only one who likes the Nexus 4. Maybe that's because I have a sweet spot for LG. I've always had, and I always was the one giving them chances when everybody wrote them off because of bad build quality, bad support, and so on and so forth. I'm just pretty upset that it's not yet available in my region and not even close to my region. And this is something which Google needs to address real quick. I'm not saying open a Google Play Store for Romania. I'm saying find some partners, deal with e-tailers, put the phones out in shops, because I'm sure 72% market share for Android is good, but I'm pretty also sure that they wouldn't mind at least a couple of percentages in addition.
Yeah, it'll happen. I think they're having production issues, which is why the whole pre-order thing happened in the first place. And by the way, I don't dislike the Nexus 4, Tony. I'm disappointed with it, and I think people's expectations should be kept in check. I expected more, exactly.
The hint word for the Sonos giveaway is frequency. Well, you've had the DNA now for a couple days. How does it compare? I mean, how do you... And we know how... We can watch the video to see how it compares, obviously, but I feel like you will have more favorable things to say about the DNA, and I think that's going to be display-centric. Tell me if I'm wrong on either of those.
Yeah, I kind of want to do a slow clap for HTC here, because for the last 2 years, I've been pretty disappointed with what HTC has brought to the table. But this is truly different, and I should say I've been using it over AT&T actually for the last. I got it on Monday, and what is it today? What's Wednesday? I've been using it for about 48 hours, and it works fine over AT&T, which is really funny.
Yeah, it is.
It's all you have to do is add an APN setting to make it work over HSPA Plus, and it's just fine and dandy over AT&T.
Awesome. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just blown away. I mean, that's just weird.
It's really funny. HTC did some really crazy, awesome things, and it's really one of the stories where it's a sum of its parts. The hardware is beautiful. It's like,
yeah, it is.
You pick it up and you're like, this is an HTC. This is what they do. They make good hardware. Yeah. They did some amazing details on the sides and the top, and it feels good in the hand. And as you like to point out, Michael, it's not a phablet, it's a phone, and it feels like a tall phone.
Yeah, right? Totally.
And then you turn it on and you see Sense and you roll your eyes for a second, and then you notice that the screen, there's something different about the screen. It's more crisp and clear, and it's not like a knock your socks off thing. In fact, I was talking to Tony about this, and I compared it to if you have a 1 to 10 scale, going from WVGA devices of like 2 years ago to 720p was going from like a 3 to a 6. Like it was a pretty dramatic upgrade.
Yeah.
Going from 720p to 1080p is like going from a 6 to a 7.5, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd say like a 6 to 8, but yeah, I think you're right. It's not as dramatic, it's not as notable an increase, but then again, it all depends on your expectations. If you come to the device like I did, with like this attitude of like 1080p screens on a smartphone, what are you trying to pull on us, industry? And then you look at it, and you actually lay eyes on it, and it is actually beautiful. It is noticeably better. Well, then your whole thing is like, well, this phone has changed my life, for a minute.
Right. And so I was looking for some ways that the 1080p would change the experience. But before I get to that, so I turn it on and I'm like, this screen's pretty darn good. And then I see HTC Sense, and I moan a little bit inside, because the last time I had an extended experience with Sense was with the 1X and the 1X Plus. And both of those devices with that silly, crappy, slow Tegra 3 CPU is laggy, and it makes the perception of Sense even worse, because you're like opening one of those folders that Sense has, which don't look like stock Android. They're kind of more rounded edges, and they have like a visual style, and it's choppy, and you're like, this Sense thing, it sucks. But on the Droid DNA with the S4 Pro and the 2 gigs of RAM, Sense is very responsive, as you point out in your review, Michael, and I totally agree. And interestingly, you were talking about a comparison with the Nexus 4 and the DNA. They both have very similar hardware. They have the S4 Pro. They have 2 gigs of RAM. But interestingly, if you boot up both from a dead
from a cold state.
Yeah, from a cold state, and then you run a certain amount of apps. Then you check the amount of available RAM with them running the exact same apps in the background. And I did this test on the video. On the Nexus 4, you're using only 25% of your RAM, which is 1.5 gigabytes usable. On the DNA, you're using 50%, twice as much. Sense is using twice as much RAM as a device with no interface. So Sense is still heavy. Sense is still bloated, but that's besides the point. The DNA can handle, I think, the bloated interface.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Like, I mean, if it's not noticeable to the end user, does it really matter?
I don't think it does, but I think just for illustrative purposes, it's interesting. That
it is very interesting. Yes, no, I agree. I think it's an interesting piece of investigative work you did. Go ahead.
So I set up the phone. I add my contacts. I add my email, and I use it. And you know, it's a darn good experience all through and through. And in fact, when this device, as the DLX or whatever, is released on AT&T, which I know it will be, it'll be different a little bit, sure. But the 1080p HTC thing with the S4 Pro, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and it's got LTE on my home carrier, AT&T, I might use it as my daily driver. I mean, it's just such a...
Yeah.
It's a good phone. And so then there's this question of the 1080p screen. And the DNA undoubtedly has a really, really good screen, but where it shines is in 3 places that I found. Number 1, web browsing, because you can, if you have Superman vision, or really good vision, you can read tiny, almost 1-point size text from the complete zoomed out view. And those of you with like a Galaxy S3, you'll say, well, I can do that too. And you're right, you can do that. But I actually did this experiment. I took the Galaxy S3 and the Droid DNA and loaded Pocketnow and tried to read the text from the zoomed out view. And on the DNA, it was just very precise. The text, you could read it. On the Galaxy S3, it was a little bit more of a struggle. So there's that. You can read really small text if you have the eyesight. Number 2, interestingly, and maybe you notice this, Michael, when you open the camera app and you've got the viewfinder thing going and you're kind of moving the camera around your environment, the screen is so sharp and clear that for a second you almost think that you're looking through a piece of glass. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. Absolutely. And part of that is, and Tony, you haven't seen this, so I'm sorry that you can't have seen this yet. But when it's next to a device with a different kind of display, like the AMOLED panels on the Galaxy Note 2 or the Galaxy S3, the authentic color reproduction is amazing on the SLCD3 panel of the DNA. And I think that lends something to that camera experience you're talking about, Brandon, where it looks like you're holding this. Yeah, because the color reproduction is amazing.
I didn't think of that. So yeah, when you're using Galaxy S3 and you're using the viewfinder thing in the camera app, you're like, oh wow, this blue statue looks like fluorescent blue. It's kind of fun, right? But it's not real life. But on the SLCD3, it's just so much more true to life.
Yeah.
So that's a second thing. That's a really cool effect. If you can go to a Verizon store, listeners, check that out. Just like hold the camera up to something, and it's kind of fun. The third thing that I noticed about the 1080p screen being different is that just looking at photos, kind of like on the iPad 3 and 4, where like the native view is almost the full resolution photo. It's a similar kind of thing on the Droid DNA, and like the clarity you get without zooming in is just remarkable. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine lost his Droid Bionic in a cab the other day, and he's just hacked that thing to pieces, and he's always just going crazy on custom ROMs and all. You know, he loved that thing because it was a powerhouse that he could tweak. But he lost it, so he's asking me what he should buy, and you know, of course, he reads Pocketnow all the time, and he's like, how about I'm torn between that DNA and the Razer Max, buddy, and I'm like, well, you know, what do you need? And you know. This is a guy, and I am going somewhere with this. This is a guy who doesn't use a lot of storage, who doesn't need a lot of storage, and who isn't frequently far away from a power outlet. And, you know, likes good build quality, and as long as the bootloader is unlockable, he's okay. So, and they've done that for the DNA, so I'm like, wow, you are the perfect customer to consider the Droid DNA, because those are the shortcomings, right? Storage and battery life.
Right.
And they're kind of, for me, unless you really hate Sense, they're the only shortcomings, because it's such an amazing piece of technology. I love that phone.
And when you get when you unlock the bootloader, and I can't do it on this tester unit because I've got to send it back. I can't wait to load like CyanogenMod 10 on this puppy and go crazy with like the lightest version of Android possible on this crazy awesome screen. It's gonna be the hot stuff. Just to conclude some thoughts about the DNA, I'm trying to think of downsides, and the main downside is that the screen is so tall, and you point this out in your review, Michael. Reaching for the power button is a two-hand affair, unless you're willing to like shimmy it down a little bit. That said, typing with one hand is actually possible. It's not that wide like a Note 2, where you're really stretched. Although the Note 2 has a keyboard that can kind of go to the side. Right. So one-handed usability isn't ideal here. If you've got smallish hands, you might not like the DNA. But like this, I am really happy with what HTC is doing here, and I think. This is going to be their thing for the next, I think, 3, 4, 5 months. This 1080p S4 Pro, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and it's going to come out in a variety of form factors. I slow clap all around, and so that's that.
Completely agree. I'm glad that you got some time with it before we had to send it back, and I'm actually thanks to a public thanks to our friends at Verizon HTC and everyone who support them for giving it to us for a little bit longer. So we could do that. But it's not going to be the only one on the only 1080p panel on the market for long. Obviously, we're seeing a very, very pronounced trend that 1080p is going to be the new standard for flagship displays. And since you have a soft spot in your heart for them, Tony, would you like to talk a little bit about the rumored LG Optimus G2?
I think we'll probably see this not at CES but at MWC, and you better bring a Droid DNA with you so that we can make some comparisons. Yeah. I'm not sure what to expect exactly from LG, and in terms of where they're headed. The Optimus G was a point where HTC has shifted something within their design, within their build quality, within everything.
LG, you mean?
LG.
Optimus G with the I'm sorry. So LG shifted with the Optimus G. If they keep on going with the same trend and deliver a phone which would make us speak highly of it, just like we do with the Droid DNA, I think they have a chance of getting back in the market. Agreed. But if the Optimus G will be the only thing which will be buzzworthy, and the G2 or G whatever G1080p which will come out next year will not deliver, I think that that's going to be a chance blown.
And I think you're right, and but I have some strange faith in LG right now for some reason, because the Optimus G really rattled my whole sense of how that company performs and how it does things, and it's like, wow, you guys sent me an Optimus G, and I thought, well, all right, I'll review it and we'll see how it goes, and then it really blew me away, and I think that's really heartening to see. And I think they will bring the heat with the G2, and it's supposed to step up to a better processor, the S4 Prime.
Yes,
the S4 Prime. Tell me about that, please. I just hit my desk.
It's Brandon. So Brandon just flipped a table. The S4 Prime, I think, is the notch above the S4 Pro, right, Tony? On the
it's 2 gigahertz processor, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Oh my gosh, this has got to enter our vocabulary now.
Yeah, I bet the Galaxy S4 will have something like that in an Exynos form. But just getting back a little bit to LG, I think similarly to Samsung, LG has everything they need to have in order to deliver. I mean, LG's screen technology is excellent. They are suppliers for Apple, and we know that Apple is very picky when it comes to screens. They have excellent divisions which are working on batteries, and the Optimus G is an example for that. So if they manage to collaborate all of their divisions to work together, just like they did with the Optimus G on this new phone, I think we'll have 3 big players next year, and it will not be a Samsung, let's say, dominated market. There will be Samsung, HTC, and LG fighting for that spot.
Yeah.
I should follow up and say that the S4 Prime is actually for devices like televisions. It doesn't have a modem. Maybe it's a different Prime or something.
It's just rumors at the moment. The key takeaway here, I think, is that they cannot out a product on the market next March with the same Snapdragon S4 Pro like we see today. So there's got to be something after the S4 Pro, whether if it's the Prime or the Optimus or other transformer. It should be somewhere close to 2 gigahertz because that's where we're headed at.
Well, this might be apples to oranges, but we did see that the earlier Qualcomm Snapdragon S4, not the Pro, we saw that chip make the rounds for quite a long time. I feel like that was there were devices being announced for that powered by that chip for
that is true,
a year, right?
Don't forget the new Exynos inside the Galaxy S4 will step up the game again.
We'll see.
And they will just need to play catch up again. It's just all deja vu all the way. We had the Galaxy S2 with the Tegra, then we had the Galaxy S3 with the Tegra 3 and the S4 Pro. Then there's going to be the Galaxy S4, and there's got to be a response from Qualcomm and NVIDIA.
I love that we're talking about the Galaxy S3 already.
Or the Galaxy S4?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
it's coming. Well,
it's not too far. When was the 3 announced?
3rd of May. I was in London. 3rd or 2nd
that's
of
right,
May.
You were, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that means by February we should have a picture, all specifications, and so forth.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. It's so difficult for me to get excited about new Samsung hardware, but and that's funny because I guess I'm the one who always gets accused in the comments of being the Samsung fanboy on the team because I'm like buried in Samsung hardware over here. But it's like I've never fallen in love with the Galaxy S3's build. I love a lot of things it does, but whatever. We'll see what the 4 brings. I hope they don't do fake metal, fake metallic plastic.
No, because that wouldn't play well with bendable screens.
Ooh.
Yeah, that bendable screen thing. I don't know about
I'm
that.
not buying it.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, speaking of, we'll close out Android with one more Samsung bit. Samsung is not just doing bendable screens; they're doing weirdo form factors.
Oh, I'm feeling 20 years old again.
I love this thing. Samsung has revealed a dual-screen quad-core Android flip phone. Now, these are not, this is not unique. I mean, there are some Android flip phones out there, and of course, usually they're for China or for markets or Japan or markets that really like flip phones still.
In Asia, yeah.
Yeah, in Asia, yeah, and this one is one of them. It is the SCHW 2013, which just rolls right off the tongue. And it keeps the basic design of the W999, Stephen Shank says. So basically, listeners, it's a flip phone that runs Android. And when it's closed, I love this design. When it's closed, it has a big old screen on the outside, and then under the screen are the home buttons. Like when it's closed, it looks like a small Android candy bar phone. Then you open it up, and it has a screen of exactly the same size on the inside. And then it's got a numeric keypad, which, I would love to just send a couple texts on an Android device with a numeric keypad.
I would trade my S3 for this one.
What really?
Yeah,
Actually,
I just love this form factor.
Me too. I really miss flip phones. We've actually written a piece. I wrote a piece for Pocketnow called "I Really Miss Flip Phones."
We grew up on this.
We did. I mean, this is maybe a huge nostalgia trip. Before I finished reading the story, I was like, I'm buying one. And then I got to the bottom of the story.
No, you won't.
No. We have yet to confirm the 2013's price. It's expected to be somewhere around the $3,000 mark.
Oh, yeah.
Get out of my face. I mean, like, and then
That's not
this is going to be carried by a very special set of folks who have a lot of disposable income. Go ahead, Brennan.
Hey, how about a fun fact? Fun fact / pro tip. So you just talked about this T9 pad. Michael, did you know that on all HTC Sense devices, you can toggle between a regular full-size QWERTY, a T9 pad, and a Sure-Type BlackBerry-style keyboard?
Yes. I did not know about the Sure-Type one, but yes, I knew you could toggle to a numeric one. That's thanks to Sense, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And who would use that? I mean, just tapping the 2 key to get a C 3 times?
I'll tell you. No, it's got T9, so you don't actually have to do that.
Yeah, but I don't use that because I'm texting in 3 languages every day.
Right.
Well, most other people are not.
most other people don't.
Most people speak one language, and like it's for example, you take like a teen, and you ever see a teenager or even one of us when we were younger on a numeric keypad? We could text all day, no thumb cramps.
Absolutely.
So you get one of those guys, to go to a smartphone, and you're like, hey, here's your thumb thingy back, and they're like, yes.
You know what also, like, practically, it's a very good thing for one-handed use.
Oh yeah,
one-handed typing on a full QWERTY is just the biggest pain in the butt in history. But one-handed typing on T9 is like, oh, whatever. Yeah, I'm used to this.
Yeah.
I used to when I used to judge phones back in the flip phone days on like how awesome on physical key feedback on the keypad, and because that was huge. Like if you were texting a lot, you needed a keypad that was going to give you solid feedback. I think my favorite one was the i870 from Motorola, which was on Nextel, which none of you used, so never mind. Just to wrap up some quick iOS stuff, I feel like iOS we haven't been intentionally neglecting it on the podcast. It's just there hasn't been a lot of news. There's a lot of news about component, Apple fighting with Samsung about components, and Samsung's not going to give them batteries anymore, and it's like, I can't. Nothing would interest me less.
And again, on that exact note, today there's another rumor. I say another because there were like 375 in the past 2 weeks of Apple again allegedly ditching Samsung as their main primary chip provider. So that's just another rumor to go into the R category and into the drawer.
Yeah, which should surprise precisely no one. I mean, these companies are in direct competition. And if you can't compete effectively with somebody, or you can try, but you can't really compete effectively with somebody who is in the consumer market who is giving you parts for your competing product. Like, I mean, you can do it. It's complicated. It's whatever. I don't know. I don't run a corporation, so what the hell do I know? But the point is, iOS is once again number one in the United States, following, I believe, Tony, a giant Black Friday push, right?
No, actually, this thing, this survey was a 12-week survey, and it is up until October 28th, so it doesn't even have anything to do with November.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm waiting for numbers after Black Friday, but this is just normal. Apple and Samsung are exchanging first spots depending on who releases the phone and when. When the Galaxy S3 has been released on U.S. carriers, everybody went the Android Galaxy S3 way, and Apple's iPhone just fell. Now, with the Apple iPhone 5, everybody's buying the iPhone 5. And I expect these two, if you look at those two lines in the graph, they're continuously intersecting. And they will intersect again next year when the Galaxy S4 will come, and it will go on like that. The interesting thing is that it's not only about the Galaxy S3, but it's Android. So we're talking about one phone by one manufacturer against all other phones running Android, and this is something which is worth mentioning.
What's interesting is that I'm looking at the graph right now, and the rim line is of course barreling into the basement, but it has a very definite decline at the exact same time the iOS line skyrockets.
Well, it's 6%. It's 6% turned from BlackBerry to the iPhone 5, and 13% from Android to iPhone 5.
Interesting. And then the Windows Phone has a little bit of a hump there.
That worries me. Yeah, that really worries me.
Very concerning. Yeah. We'll have to see how these things go in the future. But it's interesting to I think that's the most compelling thing, and it's a shame because I think this is one of those things that where if we did have a video podcast, we could throw this up, or if we had more time to cut it together, we could throw this up on the thing. Because listeners, you should check this out. Normally, I'm not a stats man, but you want to look at this story called "Apple's iOS Once Again Number One in the U.S." From Tony from November 27th. Because if you just look at this graph, if you're a visual person, it's a really cool indicator of the health of all these platforms. And when you actually look at Windows Phone down there, like it's mustard color down there between the 0 and the 10, it's really interesting compared to these big to the green and red iOS and Android fighting up top. But there's
also something I would like to just touch upon. It's iOS related, and it's not on the schedule. It's about Apple, and after the entire executive changes, which were at, I think, the end of last month, we're now hearing some new reports that Senior Vice President Eddie Q has fired Richard Williamson, exactly because of the iOS 6 Maps fiasco. So the fiasco is going on, is continuously going and increasing. It just started off at the top of the mountain, and it's just becoming something huge by the time it reaches the bottom. I think when Tim Cook said that they are committed to working nonstop until they fix the maps and deliver on the experience, I think this is part of it. I mean, either people who don't see eye to eye with the direction or with the experience or with anything are either you do it this way and we fix it, or you're fired. And they just keep on firing executives regardless of how high they are ranking within the company.
Right.
And this is something good.
And of course, we're in this situation. I think we mentioned this last time, where Apple's between a rock and a hard place. The iOS Maps is going to be released, and if they don't approve it, they're going to get really bad press. And if they do accept it or let it into the store, there's going to be huge migration away from Apple Maps, and so either way they kind of lose, right, with the whole Maps thing. So
yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and Tony, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't put it in the rundown because I figured that if we were going to have to talk about Apple and Maps again, I was going to like blow my head off. But no,
we'll keep on talking about it until they fix it.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's a shame. I'm interested to see how Nokia Here Now that mapping software keeps doing. I think at this point I'm just counting down the days until Google gets a Maps app in the store, because I think it will be in there. It'll be fun to use if that does become the case. We are going to have, not to overpromise here, but I think we are going to have another story in our Lost at Home series, right, Tony? Are we going to get somebody else out there with using Apple Maps to compare against the other platforms?
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but yes.
Make it happen.
Awesome.
Hey, gentlemen, I had a hard stop at 11:45, so I have to bounce off. But you guys keep going. And
sounds good, man. Well, we will miss you in your absence. We will try and keep the snarky remarks to a minimum.
But you can listen to the podcast anytime after, let's say, 2 hours from now.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Can't wait.
All right, man. We will.
Take care.
We'll see you later, Brandon.
All right. Ciao. Bye.
So, Michael, just to answer your question, we were talking about Nokia Here and how well it was doing. I wrote a piece that 24 hours after it's gotten released, it was on the 5th spot. Well, right now, I cannot find it in the top 5.
It's no longer in the top 5.
No. So I'm looking at the exact same link I used, top free iPhone apps, and I just keep looking at the list right now, and I cannot find Nokia Here anywhere.
Wow.
I just keep on scrolling.
Yeah, we'll see how it. We'll see how that pans out. There's going to be more iPhone users to take it, because this is our final iOS story before we get to the mail call, because we are going to do mail. We have 2 pieces of cool listener mail today, and that's fun. But very briefly, AT&T in the United States is one of these carriers that offers refurbs. These refurbished phones, which are not brand new, they've been factory refreshed and then they're repackaged and resold for a discount. And this was a story. This was your story, Tony, from November 23rd. They're offering the iPhone 5 as a refurb for $99.99 on a contract for the 16 gig version. Now, what is that a savings of? Is that $100 off?
That is indeed, and it's not even that. It's the fact that whenever you go and try to purchase an Apple iPhone 5 off of Apple's online store or anywhere else, you will need to wait still for 2 weeks. And with the refurbs, the waiting time is lower. So yeah, and the price, of course, the iPhone 5 is the last generation iPhone. You can get the latest generation iPhone for a great price, and if I understood well, there's also warranty, so you're all set.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, which is crazy. Now, I want to talk about this in detail on a future show, because the whole refurb question is endlessly fascinating to me. We never sold, when I was at Sprint back in ages ago, we never sold refurbs in the official retail stores. But we could get them we used them for service and repair replacements. And I hate to say it, but the failure rate on those, in my experience, was higher. Like it was supposed to, and the whole party line is that, no, it's people don't want to take refurbs, so you just reassure them. It's like, no, this is it's better than brand new. It's been sent back to the factory. It's been, and it has. Right? It's just kind of like retail salesman BS, but it never turned out that way. I saw more people come back with defective refurbs than I did with defective brand new hardware.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
But it also has probably something to do with the psychology of the consumer, because some say, I will probably not use a phone which was used and it's basically a secondhand, even if they sold it like a new phone. But there are those people, just like me, for instance. I would prefer a refurbished phone if, of course, the outer aspect would be exceptional. Right. I know that this was used, this has been fixed, and is covered by the same warranty as a brand new phone. So I'm going to buy it for probably 50% less.
Sure, and you get a money savings in it. And if it's not, if it's going to be a device that you're going to like beat around, and like if it's going to be a kind of a toy, a hobby device, yeah, I'm with you. If I'm buying a daily driver, and this is why I think unboxing videos are a thing. This is why packaging review videos are a thing, because it's special. It's a special experience to take your new device out of the box for the first time and to peel off that screen protector, which I love doing on videos.
It shows.
Yeah, thanks. But it is. It's very special to do that with something that is presumably going to be with you for a year or two if you have exceptional endurance.
Yeah.
So anyway. But that's, if you're into iPhone refurbs, get your butt over to AT&T if you're an American. Shall we do the mail call, Tony?
Yes, please.
Awesome. Well, we have two pieces of listener mail today, both from listeners who have written in before. Thank you again. Thanks to all who wrote in. This is from the Whim in the Netherlands, who says, it used to be that BlackBerry was the platform of choice for corporate and governmental use because of the secure messaging and IT management tooling. Now, with the demise of the glory of BlackBerry, people could move to Windows Phone 8, he suggests. It offers Exchange, push mail, and some IT management tooling, as well as corporate marketplace. How does this match to the other platforms? Are Android and iOS equal matches, or maybe even better for corporate use? Regards, and thanks for all the good work. The Whim, thank you for the message. We've heard some rumors over here in the States about Android being used, kind of government agencies thinking about or actually implementing Android devices on a massive scale, which is weird because I think the problem with Android has always been presented as a security issue, right? Because Android is really is the most open OS of. It's not an open OS like it proclaims itself to be, but whatever. So Android is not huge, at least in America, for corporate use, but iOS certainly is. And I think, Tony, talk about this, because this corporate stuff I'm not very good at. But
First of all, I would like to make just a correction. I'm just looking at a November 27 press release, which happened to be just yesterday, and it goes like this. Apple's iPhone and smartphones running Google's Android will outgun Research in Motion's BlackBerry for the first time in 2012 in the enterprise device market, according to IDC.
Really?
So they are still there. They are still number one. Second thing of note is that, of course, both Android and iOS support, luckily, Exchange and all the tools necessary for a phone to be used as a corporate phone within an enterprise. Mm-hmm. The question is, and this is a great question, with Research in Motion's, all the BlackBerry, BES, and all other platforms, we were used to having an IT department who would manage all devices within that network. Mm-hmm. Now, since BlackBerry is falling and Microsoft is not really gaining momentum, BlackBerry made a smart move. They implemented and they released RIM's Mobile Fusion. Well, this Mobile Fusion thing allows basically these IT departments to continue to manage enterprise phones. And RIM's Mobile Fusion only works with Apple's iOS and Google's Android. So Windows Phone is not even on the list.
And that's brutal for them because Windows Phone wanted to steal market share from RIM. That was their whole thing.
I'm not an analyst by any means, but I know that there are two types of corporate phones. Usually those phones which are handed out to workers from the company, and there are those phones which they are called bring them in or something like that. They are normal users. Say I have a phone, I work for a company, I bring in my phone to the company, and that becomes a company phone. So Windows Phone can become a company phone. I'm not sure if they will, because exactly this, because of the tools which allow those IT departments to manage phones within the company.
Right. Yeah. You know, I think that. Damn. Unless Windows Phone finds a way to do as you're suggesting, and to kind of, you know, come at it from the bottom like that, I see Android and iOS kind of extending their dominance of their consumer space into the enterprise space.
Which is strange, because if you come to think of it, Microsoft owns Exchange, so the Exchange is the go-to resource for enterprises. It has shared contacts, collaboration tools, emails, and everything. And since it's a Microsoft product, you would expect Microsoft Windows phones to be the go-to resource as far as hardware is concerned, and of course Microsoft-powered tablets.
Right.
But sadly, Microsoft, with their 2-point-something market share, I'm trying to figure a board meeting where the IT department comes up to the board members and suggests platforms for future use within the company. And I'm trying to think about the points he would make in favor of Windows Phone.
Yeah, I can't envision it. You know, we'll have to see how it actually plays out. And this is so far afield from my area of expertise, because like the last time I actually used Exchange, I think, was, speaking of my time at Sprint, was back then. And this is like 2007 when I left Sprint, or 2008. And since then, in the intervening 4 years, I mean, we might use, I don't know if we use Exchange for anything, if anybody on our team uses Exchange, but I
do. Brandon uses. So we have Exchange on the team. Yeah.
I don't. I've been in Google Apps for 4 years. I've been in, you know, my personal Gmail. And anyway, we're getting.
Well, don't forget that also offerings from Google, especially Gmail, and the free offerings from Microsoft, the Hotmail, which is now Outlook.com, have a certain exchange to them. I mean, they support push notifications. They act similarly, and you can set them up as an Exchange account.
Sure.
But it doesn't have all the collaboration tools, sharing tools, which Exchange has.
Exactly. Or, yeah. We have one more piece of from Ryan Field from California. Ryan, hello again. Hey guys, huge fan of the show. Thank you. I have a quick question and a comment directed at Anton. Tony,
am I the popular one?
Yes, Tony. I'm actually the comment for you is very long, so I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to let you read that. And actually, Ryan says, if you don't read this on the air, at least let him see it. It's about the Samsung ad push for the Galaxy S3.
Ooh.
So my question, here's an interesting question, is should I buy a Nexus 10? I'm currently using an HP touchpad, hopping back and forth between CM9 and WebOS. Way to go, Ryan. Android works at a mediocre level, while WebOS is about as useful as Michael's WebOS toaster fantasy.
Don't you dare insult the toaster. The toaster is sacred, dude, right. As long as it runs WebOS.
I was going to say, damn. So I'm really curious.
Like the dishwasher.
Just like the WebOS refrigerator. So I'm really curious about the Nexus 10, and with Christmas right around the corner, now is as good a time as any to shop. Ryan, that's a very good point. And if you're looking for a 10-inch device, it sounds like Ryan is firmly decided on this kind of 10-inch thing. I have my recommendation. Then, Tony, I think you can give yours. My thing is this: if you need a 10-inch tablet, and it sounds, Ryan, like you want to stick with Android. We don't have our full review of the Nexus 10 up yet. Joe Levi is.
We'll have it probably by the time this podcast goes live.
Right, it should be up very soon. So you'll want to look at that. Everyone will want to look at that because Joe Levi makes very soothing videos that are awesome. But the thing is, I would buy it if I were you, Ryan, given your situation. I only had a very brief hands-on time with it, but during my unboxing, it felt great in the hand. But more importantly, it is a Nexus device, which means not only that it's going to run much better than. Well, it might run much better than your CM9 build on the touchpad, just because it's more modern hardware and it's running officially supported Google stuff. But it is also probably going to be a target for eventual porting of OpenWebOS as a Nexus product. So Ryan, even though it's not very useful right now, if you're able to run in the future, if you're able to run OpenWebOS on it, it can only add to the value of the device. Whereas if you were to go for another 10-inch Android tablet, like something from, a Galaxy Tab or a Zoom 80 or whatever.
That's what I was supposed to say. I keep on thinking, since I heard this question, about an alternative Android tablet to the Google Nexus 10, and the Note 10.1 is as far as it goes. I mean, I know there are Asus, Acer, everybody, Toshiba out there, but I just don't have a feel for them. And probably the Google Nexus 10, because it's a Google device and it's made by Samsung, is the best combo you can get.
Agreed. Yeah, and and there's something to being part of the Nexus family and not having it. Doesn't have the Nexus 10 doesn't have a carrier radio in it, does it?
No.
Yeah, so that's not going to come in and mess you up,
But you can tether from your Nexus 4.
Exactly, or you can tether from anything, whatever. I don't know what device you're carrying around there, but you can probably tether from it if you want, So yeah, absolutely, I would give the Nexus 10 a big thumbs up there. Like I say, watch the review first, but it sounds like it's the right choice for somebody like you, and that's the thing. Just to reiterate for everyone who follows us on Twitter and for the guys who kind of every day send me things like, should I buy this or this? This is such a complicated scenario. It all depends on your use case. It depends on how you use the device, what kind of person you are, what you need from it. The 140 characters of Twitter is just not enough to make those recommendations. So I'm sorry, it's not that we're ignoring you. It's just that we can't make the recommendation. We're too busy. So, do you, Tony? Do you have any other thoughts on the Nexus 10 or anything we've spoken about before we wrap up?
I'm curious to read the Nexus 10 review, I'm waiting to see the Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales numbers just to see how the market share shifted, if it shifted, how many million units did this one OEM without naming one sell, and how many millions did the other one.
Me too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that data. Did you end up getting anything on Black Friday in Romania?
No, my experience here in this part of the world was bad. So let's stay with that, remain with that, and
Okay.
No, I did not get anything this Black Friday because there was no internet in Romania on Black Friday. Everybody was trying to get something.
That's rough. What about Cyber Monday? Does that exist over there?
That does not, and you know what? Strangely, I always thought about Black Friday as being a day when you will get deals going to the shop physically, and Cyber Monday being a day where you would get deals online.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that not only here in Romania, but still in the US too, these two things kind of mixed up, and you can get deals online on Black Friday too.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there were a lot of roundups. I didn't find anything interesting out there, so I didn't bother myself. I just went to a winery and listened to a Sonos sound system.
Which we're giving away, by the way.
Exactly. And listeners, by this point, if you're still with us, you have heard the hint word, which I have composited in on a separate audio track with a little ding. And hopefully you have stuck with us till the end. And if you have, and you can hear my voice, then from Tony and Brandon and me, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly Podcast. So let's go ahead and wrap it up, shall we?
Let's do it.
Feel free, listeners, to throw a tweet our way. We've talked about Twitter. We've talked about Twitter a lot this podcast, actually, and we are all on Twitter. From this show, Brandon Miniman is at Brandon Miniman. Tony over there is at Anton D. Nagy. ANTOND-NAGY. Am I getting any closer to pronouncing your last name correctly?
No.
Okay. And fair enough. And you can find me.
Soon I will probably say my name the same way you do.
Nagy. Okay. All right. Well, you can find me, Michael Fisher, which is very easy for me to say.
Michele Pescatore.
Did you?
If you were Italian.
Oh, I knew I heard the fish bit. At Captain 2 Phones is my Twitter handle. It is Captain 2 Phones. Follow Pocketnow's official Twitter account as well. Pocketnow Tweets is the name there. You can also follow us on Facebook and Google+. And please leave us a review on iTunes or Zune. If you like the podcast, it helps us stay visible, and it helps us get the podcast to more ears, which makes the podcast last longer overall. And thank you for sticking with us this long. If you have a topic, question, suggestion for the podcast, or you just want to say hi, you can email us at podcast@pocketnow.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Good luck in our Sonos giveaway, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm always just petrified that one of these days I'm going to forget to press record.
That's going to be fun.
I know, right?
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1, rather. 3, 2. Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of... No, that's not right.
I was supposed to say that. You said 3, 2, and then no 1, so it should be wrong.
I'm not going to say 1. 1 is retired. 1. Excuse me. 3, 2. I am so ruined today. Okay, one more time. 3, 2.